It's that time of the year when people fast and feast, give and take, spend and splurge. Navaratri or the 9 nights of celebration have begun, and in the run up to Diwali, the biggest festival of the Indian retail industry too. Shopping and gifting form a very essential part of the celebrations. However, with the COVID 19 pandemic, the world has fundamentally changed from how we knew it. People are buying differently, living differently, and in many cases, even thinking differently. Will they be buying local products? Will they be embracing e commerce like never before? Will there be new categories emerging owing to changing needs and aspirations? To answer this and more, we have with us one of the most credible voices of the Indian retail industry, Mr. Arvind Singhal, who is the chairperson and managing director of Technopak Advisors. So, Mr. Singhal, we have just begun with Navratras, and that is essentially the time when the consumption story really begins. People start spending and unstringing their wallets. Where do you think people are going to be spending this Diwali?
The pandemic has caused significant amount of economic damage to the country. We knew that Q1 numbers were 23 point some percentage points in GDP down. The Q2 numbers are not out, but it'll be probably closer to 9 to 10% decline in this September 30th quarter as well. We also know by and large that across India there has been a reduction in incomes for most people. So whether you are self-employed, you are into a small business, you are a trader, you are a day job worker. I'm not speaking for a few people who are in Mumbai or Delhi. I'm talking about India as a whole. So when you see destruction or decimation of incomes, then in such cases, even though you have a desire to spend money, but where is the money going to come from? Some money will be there, of course, but on a macro level, the GDP contraction should mirror the reduction in spending also. Flip side, and that is where my confusion comes in these 6-7 months, a lot of usual expenditure for many people have actually not been incurred. For example, travel. Even in terms of commute, the fuel you would put into personal vehicles for your office commute. Even if you are not going to an office, you are self-employed, you are a daily wager, whatever limited income you have, but some of the expenses which you would normally incur as a part of your daily work activity, those expenses have not been incurred or incurred to the extent they normally would have been done. So you would have, many people would have a bit more personal income available than may have been the normal course. Now, this is where I think we can only see, unfortunately, directionally people will be spending money on the same kind of stuff as they were buying last year. I don't see a dramatic shift in categories as such. Okay. But the quantum of spending, I personally believe that, when you total up the sales in October and November, they would be lower compared to Diwali last year. I see no economic reason as to why people can spend more money if the money is much lesser in their hands. There. That is on one broad trend about spending. And the thing about revenge buying and other doesn't work in India's case because unfortunately only the people in finance ministry understand that, look, they're given a stimulus to people. Very limited amount of money has actually reached the hands of an average citizen. This Diwali or this festive season spending will be more subdued compared to what may be the case. The first day's data yesterday, today's newspaper has all splashed with this thing. Sales on e-commerce platforms are X percentage higher than what they were last year. I just want to put a sort of a note of caution there that the total contribution of e-commerce compared to the private spending in India, merchandise I'm talking about, is less than 3%. If you were to take last year's 6-day period of Flipkart or last year's 1-month period of Amazon, double it also. It is not likely to show that there's a huge uptick in consumer spending because of very, very small share of e-commerce still, compared to the total spending in India.
Okay, so that's a very interesting take, that a lot of cautious spending will be happening and there will be no revenge buying, at least in India. Liquidity is a huge problem, and people have been at the receiving end of pay cuts, job losses, and clearly that will not be driving the consumption story the way maybe it has driven in 2019. What are the other things that Diwali 2020 will be headlined by when it comes to shopping?
Personal transport is going to be used more for your shopping trips compared to public transport, whether you are a two-wheeler owner or a four-wheeler owner. Some part of that could be reflected, therefore, in petrol cause of this. That people who may have used public transport, at least in big cities, they're probably trying to avoid that because of the fear, and therefore the usage of personal transport has increased a bit more. That is one aspect. So shopping will be done in the shopping malls and high streets simply because the only other way to shop is e-commerce, and e-commerce data does not reflect that all of India shifted to e-commerce yet. There. In terms of categories, let me just make an aside on that. So again, there could be very, very interesting. If you are an optimist like I am, you could get very happy by seeing some of the leading indicators about some categories, but I think one has to be cautious again. So it is true that automobile sales have moved up, two-wheelers and four-wheelers. If you see quarter-on-quarter numbers of last year, not only just month-on-month sequentially, there. And that is for two-wheeler and four-wheeler both. There. Right. Consumer electronics, consumer durables, home appliances have seen a bumper quarter, I would say.
Yeah.
As soon as the markets opened up, governments allowed deliveries as well. I think that, no, those could be expected by the fact that when you're spending more time at home, many of the people who have some amount of money may want to upgrade whatever appliances they were using at home. Correct. So it's not only just a new washing machine, but it could also be a better refrigerator. It could be air conditioning, even spending a bit more time at home for people who can afford air conditioning. And buying personal vehicles for the same reason that you are concerned about the safety in public transport to the extent feasible. Therefore, you may want to prepone your planned purchases of a two-wheeler and four-wheeler in this period. Now, that's having said that, to me the conundrum would still be the same, that if you're spending more money on high-ticket items, whether they are a two-wheeler or a four-wheeler or a TV or a refrigerator or a new smartphone, because every member in the family needs a smartphone now, whether you have school or whether for entertainment purposes. No, these are the devices or the products which have sold a lot in the recent times. Do they reflect an overall increase in spending? My question mark again would be the same. Where are the people getting the extra money to spend? So if you have spent a lot of money on high ticket purchases over the last few weeks, and you intend to do the same in the next 4 weeks, where is the money for spending on other goods?
Right. So let's talk about gifting, because gifting forms an important part of the celebration. And there would be 2019 was in fact the year of technology. It was one of the biggest themes prevailing. You had people gifting gadgets and gizmos, and a lot of wellness products, natural Ayurvedic hampers and stuff like that. This year with work from home, do you see work from home products catching on better than the other themes? And what do you think will be the biggest theme for year 2020?
So gifting has to be split into three components. One is gifting for yourself. Well, yourself means your family. It's a festive season, not only the Diwali Navratris season, but in general, you see across India, October, November, December is a season where people end up buying a lot of stuff for themselves as well, for their own family as well. So one category of spending is to do with gifting for yourself. The second category of gifting, which is to limited to the gifting for the festive season, the Diwali season in particular for Northern India, and equivalent for rest of India. The third aspect of gifting is actually a very interesting one for this particular season, which is to do with gifting, which is done typically on weddings. As you would know, October, November, December, January period, by and large for most of India, are the peak seasons for weddings as well. So there is gifting which is done even for the wedding purposes. So let me answer it for the three components. For self, for Diwali means for extended family and friends or business. And then there is a gifting which is a part of the wedding related gifting there. For the first one, I think people have already bought decent amount of stuff in the last 3, 4, 6 weeks for themselves, for their homes, which means you have upgraded your electronics for yourself. You have upgraded your home, your kitchen appliances, things which are missing in your life. I mean, this is what is being shown in the last 4 weeks of uptake in some kind of consumer spending. So while there might be still some people whose salaries might be getting restored, incomes coming back to some normal there. So gifting on self purposes would be purely utilitarian and functional in today's context. Consumer electronics in terms of entertainment or communication purposes, like a smartphone. Some upgradation of kitchen appliances. And these pretty much would be the categories to spend money on as far as self is concerned. When you're looking into work from home, I think that work from home phenomena is already an old phenomena by now. So if you needed something in terms of by way of special furniture or some extra lighting, I suspect many people who could work from home would have already found a solution by now. It's not something new.
Right.
So I'm not very sure how much of the WFH part will lead to additional spending in the next 4 to 8 weeks' time. Food is an integral part of gifting when it comes to Diwali gifting. I suspect that the number of new product launches which have happened in the last 6 months, ready to eat, ready to cook, snack foods, healthy or not so healthy, I think the options for consumers are much more today than buying a mithai ka dabba from some local sweet shop seller, or buying only the traditional Haldiram equivalent of namkeens.
Right.
I'm not saying the Haldirams will not do well. I'm only saying that if that was the food or the dry fruit, this time, because of work from home or COVID-induced lockdown, the sheer range of new products which have been launched in the last 3 months in the category of food, including some really nice variants, exotic variants. I suspect that food hampers for people who can afford will see an uptick compared to the past, where you may say that, look, a mithai is not so healthy for many people, a namkeen is not so healthy, therefore I might well put something else. Along with that, the traditional items will see more sales. When I say traditional, means usage for kitchen or table. So either small appliances if you are dealing with somebody who's a relative or distant one or close one, bed linen, bath linen, because more of that is being used because of the last 6-8 months of lockdown. Perhaps a little bit more of tableware. That would be, so these categories I find would be probably the ones which we'll see for gifting when it comes to Diwali oriented gifting for this season. So more emphasis, these categories were there even earlier. It's not that they were not there last Diwali. We'll see a bit more emphasis on this, and therefore de-emphasize on the knickknacks or gadgets perhaps to some extent, because gadgets are being bought for each other. Everybody is bought for themselves or would have bought for themselves by now.
Right.
So I'm not sure how much more you will give out as a cell phone or a tablet as a gift this year to others. Now let us look into the wedding. Wedding gifting will actually see a decline in terms of physical merchandise. Even though restrictions have been largely removed there, but I suspect that the weddings will be much lesser in terms of number of people attending than would have been the case last year. Certain amount of hesitation would be there even in the minds of the invited guests, whether they should go to a crowded place or not. Those gifts will directly probably translate into money being transferred equivalent value. So I think that the gifting related to weddings will probably reduce.
Quite a few takeaways from today's discussion. Traditional festivals leading to traditional formats. In online versus offline, it will be offline formats of shopping malls and high streets which will be preferred over e-commerce platforms. In the gifting category, home and health will be some of the star categories. And some new food hamper ideas will surface over conventional sweets and savories. Home essentials, kitchen appliances, bed linen and cooking wares will continue to elicit interest. But nobody is going overboard. Overall, with the decimation and the destruction of incomes, as Mr. Arvind Singhal calls it, even if there's a desire to spend money, where is the money going to come from? The only saving grace, though, is that some of the usual expenses which are not incurred during lockdown, such as fuel, commute, apparel, may be channelized into festive shopping. The bottom line still remains. People will buy whatever is need-based, whatever is functional and utilitarian.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.